this is an ESG ETF in a way. It's not looking at companies and analyzing their ESG potential and, screening them out. It's looking at countries as a whole and the government. So it's taking 26 emerging markets and whittling it down to 10 countries. It screens for life, liberty, and property freedom. So everything from terrorism and trafficking to freedom of religion, freedom of the press, size of the government, all kinds. There's 79 different screens. So here it is, 49 basis points, about average for a smart beta ESG type EM fund. Let's look at the countries that you get, because that's key. You only get 10, so what you don't get is China, Russia, Saudi Arabia. So you're going to be very different than the broad index, the MSCI emerging markets, that you have to know that. Now let's look at this compared to EEM, and also compared to the emerging markets ex-China, which I think this is competing with. And you can see the differences here between the two. Obviously, this is smaller, but the big difference here is China is a 28% weighting in EM. It wouldn't be in the ex-China one, and it's not in here. But this one's going to have a little more weightings of each because, again, it's kicking out not just China. And again, this is a unique freedom score here. So, Scarlet, look, I think for people who are really concerned about some of the things they're seeing right now in the news, this could be appealing, or if it just has a performance breakout because it doesn't hold some of those countries.
Right. Let's bring in Perth Tolle of Life and Liberty Indexes. She's still with us now. Perth, and your backstory really helps explain the formulation of your view. You lived and worked in Beijing and Hong Kong for years. You got to explore this link between freedom and markets. And we're now starting to see others make this link as well. Bloomberg, of course, reporting that the U.S. government is looking into ways to limit investment flows of U.S. pension funds into China investments or Chinese companies, because of human rights abuses, maybe also because of leverage for the trade war. What's your thesis on freedom and investing?
Yeah, so our thesis, Scarlet, is that freedom does usually lead to a more dynamic economy. It usually leads to more sustainable returns, faster recoveries, and more efficient use of human and economic capital, or capital and labor. And I don't know that, excluding any particular country from either an investment objective, whether it's a fund or whether it's, a government-run portfolio, I don't know that excluding any particular country is the best solution here. And what we do is we do freedom weighting so that the freer countries get a higher weight in the index, the less free countries relative to their peers get a lower weight. And then if you do that, then naturally these countries are excluded from the index.
I see. We've seen how ESG investors get very concerned with companies' compliance with ESG issues, but then there are entire ESG funds with allocations to China, and no one seems to really have a problem with that. It can seem like a bit of a contradiction, Eric, and I know that you were thinking there's a metaphor or a comparison to be made here with LeBron James and his response of late. Yeah,
it's kind of like LeBron James, outspoken in social issues in the U.S., but yet silent, or people are miseducated in China. It seems like, could you make the case that ESG investors have the same sort of dynamic going on?
Absolutely. That's a great metaphor, Eric. So yeah, just like sometimes we can be blind to places like China and other emerging markets and what's going on over there, but yet very aware of what's going on in our own market. And that's natural. It's a home country bias. But in some of these ESG kinds of emerging markets products, there's still a very high allocation to some of these very unfree countries. And so we're trying to eliminate that through the freedom weightings. But we don't just eliminate the unfree countries. We also give the higher freedom countries, the freer countries, a higher weight in the index.
And Perth, how do you think about Hong Kong? How did the protests in Hong Kong affect your consideration?
Yeah, so we've been working on this index for 5 years. We launched the fund May 23rd. So this all happened before this current situation in Hong Kong, the current protests. A lot of times you see in the freer markets that the freer markets tend to be more dynamic, and the less free markets tend to stagnate. And I think they have a great opportunity here. If they can just match that progress on the civil and political freedom side, I mean, imagine the possibilities there with all the human capital that they have.